Hi everyone, I'm Liam with the East Baton Rouge Parish Library Career Center, and today I'm going to show you how to apply to Barnes & Noble with your phone. So the first thing, of course, that we're going to do is look up Barnes & Noble jobs. I've already looked it up, so we'll just click that. Now this careers.barnesandnoble.com, that's the site you want to go to, not just regular Barnes & Noble. So we'll click careers, it's the first link that pops up. Now, finding the place to apply to Barnes & Noble is a little bit of a process. So it brings you to this website that talks about working for Barnes & Noble, disclaimers that they have, but here you're given two options. You can click Learn More About Us to learn more about Barnes & Noble, or more about our locations. Typically, you're probably going to pick the locations one, especially if you have a specific Barnes & Noble in mind that you'd like to apply to. So we're going to click more about our locations. And it'll bring you to another website, looks very similar, that'll describe the types of locations you can work at for Barnes & Noble. Of course, there's the retail stores, which is where the books are sold and where most people understand Barnes & Noble as a company. But there's also the home offices, the corporate level of Barnes & Noble. And there's also the distribution centers, the more warehouse level type of work that doesn't really see the public all that often. Chances are, if you're trying to apply for a Barnes & Noble job, you're looking into retail. So we're just going to look at all the available positions in the Barnes & Noble retail section. And it'll have us search for our location. We're going to go ahead and put a local zip code, just the library zip code 70816, and then press search. It'll bring up all of the retail stores that are within 25 miles of this zip code. Obviously, you would use your own zip code here to get a more accurate listing. So it'll show you what the title is, and then right next to it, it'll show you its location and how far away it is from you. I think we're probably going to apply for the full-time bookseller position for the Baton Rouge Perkins Row location. So we're just going to click that link, and it'll give you a job summary. The bookseller is what they call their retail associates, the people that are walking around or that are manning the cash register, and sometimes the people that are working in the cafe. So you have to provide excellent customer service. You make the shopping experience engaging and interactive by sharing your knowledge of new books, recommendations, knickknacks that Barnes & Noble sells. So you'll be able to read through, you get a good idea of what they would expect you to do, and then you can get a good idea of what they want from a candidate. A passionate reader, someone who enjoys working with people, someone who treats customers as the first priority, who shows respect and kindness to other booksellers and customers. Very typical retail expectations. We're going to go ahead and start applying. So then it'll bring us to this slightly different website, another third-party website that they actually do the applications on. It'll have the same summary, the same what you do, the same experience that it's expected of you, and then the affirmative action employer statement at the bottom. So we'll click apply to job. If you can't apply to the job right now, then you could apply later. It's no big deal. If you've never applied to a Barnes & Noble job, you do not have a Barnes & Noble login. So this is not going to apply to you. We're going to click here at the bottom that you don't have an account. If you've applied for a Barnes & Noble job, you have an account, and you'll be able to log in with your email address that you used and the password that you created. So since we don't have one, we're going to go ahead and click don't have an account yet down here. We'll have a privacy policy that we'll have to agree with, and then we're going to make an account. We're going to go ahead and call her Jane Public. So her email will be janeqpublic@gmail.com. Now, for the password, they have a couple of requirements. It has to be between 8 and 25 characters, and it has to have at least one special character. That's on the lower end of qualifications. It doesn't say you need a capital letter. It doesn't say you need a number. So, as long as you come up with a password that fits those requirements, it should be fine. I'm not going to show you what password I pick. Just know that you will have to put the password here, and then you'll have to repeat it here. And you can click this little eyeball to be able to see what you're typing. So I'll be right back. Alright, so now we have to pick and answer some security questions. These are questions that you should always know the answer to. The answer should never change. And if you forget your email or your password, there are questions that only you would be able to answer correctly, and you'd be able to get back into your account. So we really shouldn't pick something that would change. So favorite questions are typically ones we want to avoid. The name of your first school, though, is not going to change because you already went there. So just make sure you answer this in a way that you will remember how you answered it later. Something like middle elementary school. Now, if you don't think that you would put capital letters later, you don't have to put capital letters now. It's just type it the way you would remember it. I'm going to go ahead and pick 2 more security questions, and then we'll move on. Alright, once you've created your account, we can actually start the application. It should take about 10 to 12 minutes, it says, and they greatly value your time and appreciate your interest in Barnes & Noble. Here, also, you can save it, finish it later. At any point in this application process, you can save it, come back to it with that login that you just created, and everything you put in there will still be there. So let's get started. First question, it'll ask questions one at a time. First question it asks, are you currently a Barnes & Noble employee? Chances are you're not if this is your first time, so we'll click no and move on. Now, this is the longest part of the application. This is the bulk of it. You put all your personal information, you put your work experience, you put skills that you have, your education history, or you could come all the way down here and add a resume or a CV, and the application will read it to the best of its ability. For the sake of time, I already have a resume for this fake person, Jane Q. Public. If you don't have a resume, I'll go through and I'll show you what you would have had to type on your own, and it won't be that much different. So I'll be back once I've uploaded all of that. Now, alright, so after we upload our resume, or if you type this out, we'll just have to put the first name, the last name, country, your street address, your phone number. You don't have to put another phone number. All of these ones with these red asterisks are the only required part of the application. So we don't need a secondary, but we do need a primary, and we do need an email. You don't have to format your phone number exactly like this. This is just how it formatted because of the resume. It's fine. Then you'll add your work experience. It automatically did it as part of uploading the resume, but you can also just manually add them. You would put the company's name, what you did there, the start and end of your work there, whether or not it's your most recent work experience that it can order that, and then a general overlook on your responsibilities at that job. Then you click done. Try and do them in order to the best of your ability. Adding skills, you would just kind of add any skill that you find relevant that might work, or it'll be listed under behavioral skills, the general everyday skills that you might have because of school or because of previous work experience. And then you would just click the ones that apply, and then click add, and it'll add them to the list. And then education history, you would just put the name of the last school you went to. You can include up to 3 of the most relevant schools. So, ABC High School, that was her most recent education. She hasn't received any higher education. So, general degree, area of study, and it was a diploma. If you needed to add more, you just click add here for if you went to college or if you did a certification program, something like that. And then, of course, the resume area and the cover letter area. The cover letter and the resume are not required. But if you have one, it'll make your application look much more professional and much stronger than someone who might have the same qualifications as you but had left it out. So if you have time, I would recommend writing a cover letter using the templates that we have as part of the East Baton Rouge Parish Library website and strengthening your application like that. For now, though, we're just going to save and continue and not worry about a cover letter. Then it'll ask us some questions that are common across all job applications. Are you able to work as an American citizen that is over 16 years old? Yes, she is able to work in the United States. Will you now or in the future require visa sponsorship? If you are not an immigrant to the United States, you will never require visa sponsorship. So no. Your age category, she is over 18 years old. If you're any older than 18, that's all you need to put. Do you have prior retail or sales experience? Now, Jane Q. Public, as per her resume, does have sales experience. So she would click yes. But if you don't, it's fine. You just have to be honest and you have to pick no. This role requires early morning, evening, weekend, and holiday availability. Are you able and willing to work that availability? You could say yes, you could say no. That's up to you. This question's tricky, and it's tricky that it's required. What is your desired salary? This will require some research on your end. It's important for you to go to a website like Glassdoor or Indeed to see what people in this position are typically being paid to start out. I did that research earlier, and I found out that typically speaking, booksellers in the Baton Rouge area make about $11 or $12 an hour to start. So we can put 12 per hour. You can put whatever you want here. You don't have to format it a certain way. So if you knew the yearly salary, you could put that. If you only knew the hourly salary, you could put that too. And then we get to a tedious part of the application where we have to select our availability for each day of the week. So we'll click a drop-down menu for each day, and you can select all day for all of these. Or you can select very specific things. If you're still in school, you can select that you can really only work in the afternoons and evenings. Or if you're not, like J&Q Public, you can select all day, and you can select all day for all of them, and that'll work just fine. So I'm going to do that just to speed along this video. So make sure that you are accurate, but honest about your availability. Have you ever worked for any Barnes & Noble or Paper Source company? If you haven't, you'll click no. If you have, you click yes. Do you have any relatives that work for Barnes & Noble? Same thing. And then how did we find out about this opportunity? We looked it up. We went to the Barnes & Noble Careers website. So we're just going to click that. If a friend told you about it, if you asked one of the booksellers at your local Barnes & Noble, if you saw it on a job board, all of those are options, and you would just pick the one that is most accurate to you. Okay, now for the equal employment opportunity questions. These are technically optional. They're optional in the way that you can choose not to identify as anything on all of these questions, but for the sake of accuracy, we're going to go ahead and pick J&Q Public is white, and J&Q Public identifies as female. So that's completely up to you to answer those. Most people do. It will not affect your employment in any way, and the answers are completely confidential. All right, and now we have the veteran self-identification form. This is just a definition of what a veteran is and what rights you're afforded as a veteran. If you're not a veteran, click I am not a protected veteran. If you don't want to disclose your veteran status, choose that you don't wish to answer. If you are a veteran and want to be classified as such, then you would click the first one. Very simple. Now we have voluntary self-identification of disability. Voluntary being the key word. There's a definition of what voluntary disclosure is, what a disability is, and then a bunch of different specific examples, which I won't get into now, but if you read these and you decide this is a disability that I have that I need them to know about so that I can do my job properly, then you would click yes. If you don't, then you click no. If you don't want to answer this question, you click I don't answer. Either way, you have to put your name here as a sort of signature. So we'll put Jane Public. And then you have to put today's date. It autofills today's date. I recorded this on the 14th of October. So there it is right there. We'll click save and continue. All right. Now, voluntary felony status. No. All right. Now, the Work Opportunity Tax Credit Program. The WOTC is a survey that exists, again, in almost every job application. These are optional questions for you to answer that would let Barnes & Noble know about their own tax records. So, check yes if any of these apply to you. There are a lot of them, so I'll explain them in detail. Your family has gotten welfare. That's temporary assistance for needy families, either during the last 4 years or they stopped being eligible for welfare within the last 2 years because of limitations for how long it could be received. You could check yes if you were referred here by a rehabilitation agency, if you are 18 to 39 years of age and are a member of a family that's received food stamps within the last 2 years, you've received supplemental security income within the last 2 months, you were convicted of a felony or released from prison for a felony, or you're a veteran and either have a member of your family that received food stamps or are entitled to compensation for a service-connected disability. You can click yes, no, or prefer not to answer. None of these apply to Jane Q Public, so we'll click no. And then one of the final things, you understand that any hiring decision is contingent upon successful completion of pre-employment checks, and you click agree by understanding that you will likely go through a background check when you get offered a position. All right. Now it's kind of the same question again, but longer. This is just explaining very, very specifically. Barnes & Noble will look into your background as part of their employment process. And you have to be ready for that. You have to agree to that to be able to apply to Barnes & Noble. There's specific parts if you live in Massachusetts or if you live in Maryland, but we don't, so that doesn't apply to us. We're just going to click I agree and move on. And then it'll give us a review of all the questions we answered. We'll be able to look at them. We'll be able to edit any of them with this little pencil here on all of them. If everything looks right, we'll go ahead and click send my application. And then your application's been submitted. There's no assessment, there's no follow-up things. Just thank you for your interest. The email you used for your username is where they'll send a confirmation. So you'll just be able to check there. They'll also send confirmation to that email if you are selected for an interview or if something is missing from your application. So just keep an eye on that email. But that's it from me. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a like so that other people know that it was helpful. If you want to see more content like this, you can subscribe and turn notifications on for our channel. And that's all for this video.